Hello again, YouTube. Welcome back once again to The Broken Past. So today we're going to do something a bit more complicated than last time. We started super easy last time with our first video ever, which was swapping a dead battery out of an old Game Boy game cartridge. It worked out well. Just to follow up on that one, I tested it out right after the video, made it to the spot where I could save the game, waited till the next day, tried the cartridge again, and it's still working, still keeping the game saved. So thumbs up on that one. Thumbs up right there. It worked great. So today we're going to try something a little bit more complicated. It's still not too bad to do, but I was asked by a few people online to post a video on how to do it since they've never done it. So today we are going to convert a broken DS Lite into a Game Boy macro. For those of you who don't know what a Game Boy macro is, let me give you a couple examples of some partially completed macros here. So we've got a couple of these here. If you can tell, these are actually old DS Lites. They're basically old DS Lites, but they're just missing the top half of the display. Basically, both of these had broken tops. So removed the tops, did a few modifications to make it boot without the top screen, and there you go. Obviously, this is not the final product. We still have the leftover part of the hinge here. We have some mess here. If we flip it over, we still have the spot for the stylus. There's a slot for the DS cartridge, which we're never going to use anymore. So these are not fully done yet. It's cold here right now, so I've yet to go outside and finish these up. I do have one that's slightly farther along than the previous ones, which is this guy here. This was my first attempt at doing some Bondo work. And I understand that it does not look good. I knew that going in. This was just the first one I wanted to try. I wanted to get a feel. I've never done Bondo work before. So I just tried this one out, gave it a quick fit, filled in the stuff here, sanded down or cut down the hinge here, threw some Bondo over it. Clearly, if we zoom in on the video here, you can see definitely rough. Not the greatest job. The paint is really bad. You can see a bunch of scratches here. I never bothered sanding that out. But on the back, again, it's a super rough job. But it's missing, or I've bonded up the stylus spot, and I also drilled a few holes for the speaker in there. Yeah, so this is closer to the final product. Still not good. Still not in a position where I want to make it. Drilled a hole for the LED. Yet to fill that in with some clear epoxy for the light. We're not going to take it this far today. This is just kind of a where you could take it. There's definitely people that do a much better job with the Bondo stuff, which I hope once it warms up I'll do better. But in the meantime, we're going to take this guy and do the same thing to it. So this guy actually has a pretty good hinge. Usually a lot of these that you buy, the hinge is cracked here, and so the screen just flops open. But this is still a nice, secure piece here. But if we turn it on, we can look at the top screen and see that there's absolutely no display on the top. Maybe make out just a little bit of stuff up there. But I'm going to guess that for the most part the screen's going to be dead. We'll take it apart and we'll test it just to see in the process. But definitely the battery's almost dead too, so I'm going to shut it off. Definitely not usable. There's a ribbon cable that runs through here and has a few little curves to it and runs down to the bottom board. Usually there's somebody that people will spill stuff through the hinge, or just, eventually just bends enough from enough opening and closing that it breaks it. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and swap this out and give it a go here on video. For those of you who want to do this but are a bit afraid to do it yourself, hopefully this will give you the confidence to do so. It's actually a really easy process. We're going to start with the Phillips screw here with the battery underneath this cover. And this is actually the first time that I'm going to use. I picked up a really cool Show Me Weehaw screwdriver kit from China. Really nice spring-loaded magnetic set here. I've been using it on iFixit kit, but picked one of these up. Not sponsored, but wanted to give it a shot. A nice twist piece here on the top. So we're going to try this for the first time in this video and see how well that goes. So let's get the battery cover off, which a lot of these are pretty grimy, so then the battery cover gets kind of stuck on there. Pop that off, put that off to the side. See if I can do this around the camera today for the first time. Slide that off. Now, I left my screwdriver upstairs, but I think we'll make it work with pliers here. So at this point we have, let's see, 6 screws, 5 screws, I can't count off the top of my head. We have a Phillips screw here. We have a set of tri-wing screws, which are sort of Nintendo's screw here to keep you from using standard tools to get in there. Mini kits, the Weeha, theirs is a little bit big, but the iFixit kit has it, or you can buy these for a couple bucks. They even come when you do case swaps, so I usually send you a pair of these. But there's a tri-wing screw here underneath the DS slot. Do not forget this one. There's one here, here, and here as well. And there's also 2 Phillips screws under there. So I'm gonna see if I can use my tweezers here just to get this cover off, or if I'm gonna need to go get my knife. Oh, there we go, it comes right off. Without trying to stab it, there we go. So let's go ahead and we'll use our tri-wing here. Just take off one under there. It's kind of grimy in there, so it's not coming straight out, but that's okay. And we're also going to try this today. I just picked up a lapel microphone. The microphone on the camera on the last video did not record very well. As well as, so you don't need to take the stylus out, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, just to clean it up. The microphone on the camera didn't record well, so I did a redub later that I don't really like how it turned out. So hopefully this microphone will turn out okay when we're done. So I've got these 2 here. Keep all these screws on the bottom because we're gonna reuse these later. And forgot this one right here. I really need to get a top-down camera that can just sit straight up there and point straight down, so I don't have to do this around the camera. And then lastly, got a bit of a spudger tool to pull this out. I think I'm going to be okay. These 3 screws didn't come out. I'll tip it over just to see, I suppose. We got 2. Third. Still in there. That's okay. So for the most part, this is going to pop straight off. There's going to be 2 small little plastic tabs right in the front of here that we'll catch, that we'll need to make sure we get out. Usually what I do to get this bottom cover off is I push a bit in there to start separating the back. And then over here on the side, you can get a spudger under there. See that just started disconnecting. And just slide it around. There you can see 2 spots with the plastic tabs for the top catch on the bottom. And come from the side as well, and pops right off. Piece of cake. Be very careful. Let's see if I can zoom in far enough here. Each of these shoulder buttons has a sort of a pen that holds them into place, as well as a tiny spring. You don't want those springs to launch out of there and be lost for good. So when you pull the back cover off, I'll go ahead and zoom in here now. When you pull the back cover off, just make sure it's not ratcheting on those springs. At this point, usually what I'll do is I'll just kind of put my finger over it, lift the whole thing up, and get a bit of a sting as the spring shoots off. And sit it over there to the side. And we'll do the same for this one as well. So, believe it or not, that's probably one of the hardest parts of this whole thing. This is a pretty easy job. So at this point, we have 2 more screws. We have this screw here, which we could have done back when the back cover was on it. It does poke through there, you can screw it in, but there's also this one here that is covered when the back cover is on. So I usually just wait till this point. They're both Phillips screws. So just loosen these 2, take them out. Obviously save these as well. They're going to be reused when we go to put it back together. And now, before we take the board out here, a couple things we need to do. So first of all, we have this little tiny sort of accessory board here. This kind of doubles as 2 things here. This is the Wi-Fi card with a Wi-Fi antenna, this black antenna that runs down underneath this all the way up, and then it runs to up here to the screen, runs around the outside, runs up. I believe it's this side. I'm trying to think of it upside down. Actually, I think it's this side. But it also, if this board is not installed on the motherboard when you turn it on, nothing will happen. You'll get no backlight, no booting. So I believe this also contains possibly the BIOS. So without it, obviously it won't boot. So we need to make sure we don't lose that. But we can go ahead while we're right here. This one is actually a bit different than the other ones I've seen. This one has the antenna kind of recessed here. But let's pull that out. Get out of the way for a second. So this, it's not too bad. It connects right here, if we can see that on the screen. And there's also a double-sided sticky pad here to kind of help hold it into place. So usually start from the left side to disengage it from the socket. So it's now disengaged. And then just kind of, it's going to sound really bad, but just kind of pull on it, tear it a little. Feels like you're going to tear it, but it's just pulling the sticky pad off the backside to disengage the whole piece. So again, we're going to want to save this, put this off to the side. And this white cable here is the microphone. I guess you could do this, leave the screw in here so you don't have to fight with this moving around. It's up to you, I suppose, at this point. So disengage that. And so the thing with this Wi-Fi cable here, Wi-Fi antenna cable, is that it runs underneath the board. Sometimes this can get stuck under there, and it's kind of a pain in the rear to try to get out. So if you want to, you can cut this piece off, on this side, so you don't have to worry about the connector catching. Since we're never going to use it again, but I like keeping them all just because, in case I break one down the road on a repair. So I will just kind of feed it under there and pull it out. And in this case, it really wasn't too bad. It came right out. And then this guy, he actually feeds underneath of all of this. So let's actually zoom back out here a bit so we can do a little more work. So at this point, we are ready to actually take the bottom board out. So slightly lift up on the top, which is the bottom display. This is actually just kind of sitting in there. So we're going to give it a bit of a push and disengage the whole bottom screen and the display as well. And I'll kind of wiggle this microphone cable, just kind of get a little bit of it out of the way. I'm going to turn the whole thing around, and we're going to get to the top, or the bottom, I guess, however we're looking at it, of the display, of the bottom display. So at this point, we can see a couple things. We have a ribbon connector here for both the ribbon cable itself is for the display, the bottom display. There's a touch screen that sits on top of here, and this actually runs through a ribbon cable on the top to the back side, which I'll show again here in a moment. And there's a second ribbon cable here, and this is what runs to feed the top display. And I can actually if it comes across in the video, there's a very faint line that runs through there. So I almost wonder if that screen, actually isn't completely broken. So what we need to do for the moment is disengage this board completely from the top display. You can use tweezers if you like. I've recently cut my fingernails, but it's not too bad to kind of just really carefully stick your finger under there and flip up this plastic tab. Let's see if I can zoom in and show it. Oh, gosh, the wrong way. A little bit better here. Flip this little tab up here and kind of try to do this on camera. I think this is harder to do on camera than it is to actually do it. And then slide this ribbon cable out. More than likely, if you're doing this, your top display is obviously broken, so we don't care too much about this ribbon cable. But I still try to be careful anyway. I don't want to rip something here and short something out. And from there, we'll zoom back out. We have a board. So let's do a couple things here at this point. What do we have? We have the original control board with some really dirty, you can see some black smudges here, touch points for the buttons, kind of dirty on this side as well. These are different kinds of buttons. These actually have pieces that are already over these to connect these buttons. So these don't use the rubber pads to connect them. So these aren't too bad. We don't really need to clean these. But these will need to be cleaned. These 4 buttons, the 4 directional buttons and the 4 action buttons over here. And on the back's not too bad either. So let's do a couple things. So the first thing we can try to do, just to see where we're at, is let's take the battery and we're going to be very careful. We're going to hold the battery in place here. Flip it back over, hit the power button. You should see the light. Let's see if I can get it. Battery might be dead enough. This might not work so well. Okay, well, the battery, let's see, as low as it was when I was trying to test it, it might just be, you know what, that's okay. I think I have enough battery on one of these other ones here. Let's check this guy out. Okay, so he's got enough life. So let's take this guy as his battery here, just to test with. All right, so let's try this again. So if we run it again, hit this button. There it goes. Light comes on. Oh, nothing's going to happen because I don't have the BIOS chip. Let's set the BIOS chip in here, or the wireless chip. And kind of try to show here. Spoiler alert, this is not actually going to work. I'm going through all this just to show you it's not going to work. But if we try to do this now with the chip in place, light comes on. If you notice the screen comes on real fast and then clips right off. And that is because when the DS first turns on, it does a bunch of self-checks, checks a bunch of hardware components, make sure everything's working great. What it's doing right now is it checks to say, hey, is the top screen connected? Is the top screen working? In this case, clearly the top screen is not connected, so it's going to shut off. There's some older instructions online on how to get around this. Some of them keep the ribbon cable attached to here and solder to the ribbon cable. that's definitely an outdated process now. At this point, let's see if we can zoom in here and show. So the display is a little bit in the way, but there's some tiny test points right here. This is where we're going to take advantage of the test points to trick the DS Lite into thinking that the top screen's there. So let's do a few things at this point. Let's take this Wi-Fi card store back off to the side. Let's take the tweezers here and remove this latch to pull out this is really hard to do around the camera. To pull out the ribbon cable for the touchscreen. And let's also do the same thing for the ribbon cable for the display. This one we're going to be a little bit more careful with because we are going to obviously reuse this screen later, so we don't want to damage the ribbon cable or the connector. So there we have it. At this point, while we're here, let's go ahead and clean a few things. Let's definitely clean, use some of this isopropyl alcohol over here. Let's clean these really dirty, oh wow, hopefully these will come clean. These pieces here. I noticed that when I first turned it on to test it, that it was not responding very well to button presses on the side. So let's give it, really start to see stuff coming off of it here. Go ahead and clean this side as well. And you might give it a bit of a clean, just in a few other spots where we can find that has gotten a bit grimy with age. While I'm at it too, I've always noticed that there's usually a signature, some sort of marking on here. I'm assuming some sort of quality control. So I usually just clean those off because I like to have a nice, clean board when I'm done. And this volume switch is definitely grimy and gross here. So we're going to take this off. While I'm working on this, I suppose I should say, if you noticed when I first tested this or booted it up, the intro screen was in Japanese. And that's because I bought this from a Japanese seller on eBay by a username of Japan4U. They're, I think, just one of the biggest cartridge or console sellers on eBay. So clearly all or if not most of their consoles are going to be Japanese. The nice thing about the original or the DS Lite is it is there's no regions for old Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games. So we can use a Japanese cartridge for the Game Boy games. And we can actually configure it so that it boots straight into the game. So we'll never even see that intro logo to show Japanese. So it really we won't even really notice it from a user perspective. So we are in pretty good shape at this point. So something I want to look at while we're right here is the underside or the inside of this bottom cover. And this is exactly what I was expecting, or what I was afraid of, I suppose. So on some of these or on the bottoms of some of these DS Lites, all of these, for example, this is where the stylus goes in right here. this piece can be removed. That's not a problem. This whole thing pops out. However, on some of them, there's a second plastic piece that sits right where this peg is at. And that plastic piece comes out. And this is where I usually sit the speaker. But on a lot of these, it seems like more of these ones that have like this slight translucent sort of outer covering, this doesn't come off. So ultimately the easiest spot for these is to put the speaker right here. The problem is, if you can tell, right here is right where the DS cartridge slot sits. So we don't need the DS cartridge slot because clearly we're not going to have a DS anymore at this point. So we're actually going to desolder this and get rid of it to free up some space to attach the speaker. So with that, I am going to fire up my soldering iron and my soldering station, which actually the pad is dry on it. So I'm going to pause the video, go get that started, and go get some water for the pad, and I will be right back. All right, and we're back. So I got the soldering iron warming up. Went and got my flex pen, which is going to be helpful in desoldering this, as well as putting some solder down on those testing points on the other side of the board. So desoldering the cartridge slot can be a bit tricky. I usually cheat and cut some of these traces, but I'll kind of show my process. I'm sure there's probably better ways of doing it as well. I'm going to start by getting some flex over to here, because I'm going to put some new solder initially on these. Make sure I'm still on the camera here. On these ground pins to make them just a little bit easier to melt and disconnect here in a moment. So get these guys starting to heat up here. Soldering iron out of the way. It is definitely much trickier trying to do this in front of a camera rather than sitting right next to it. So now I understand a lot of the other YouTubers talking about trying to do this around the camera. It's definitely much trickier. So I'm going to throw a little bit of solder on these pads here, being careful not to disrupt the other stuff right next to it. Like this one here's got some components right, so we can get closer to the camera, right next to the ground pin. So we got to be a little careful, making sure we don't bump those in the process. And the last one. So next step, and I by no means am an expert at soldering either. Again, as per my last video, this is not necessarily instructions on exactly how to do it, because I'm not probably the best at it, but I can make it work, and that's sometimes that's all that we need, is just the ability to make it work. So I'm gonna throw some flux onto here. Of course, I left my scissors. I do have my side cutters down here. I might grab that. What I want to try to do is just get a little bit of these, a little bit of the solder off of these ground pins. Not a ton. I mean, clearly that doesn't look like it did a whole lot. And I'm gonna grab the side cutters and get, let's see here, Get a little bit of new copper desoldering wick here to try to take a little bit more of this off. Okay. And again, it doesn't necessarily look like I'm doing a whole lot. And to be honest, I'm really not, other than I'm trying to just get enough of these ground pins desoldered so I can get my side cutters in there just to cut them off. And the last one I'm not going to worry about because it's fairly clean already. So at this point, again, being careful, watching out for other components. This is definitely a destructive maneuver here. I'm going to carefully cut each of these 4 ground pins on the cartridge slot. This is just a cheap, I think I got this at Menards for $3 or something, so it's a pretty cheap tool. Works amazingly well. At this point, all 4 of those are done. We can see that there's clearly all the pins back here still, but we'll get those real easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit here and very carefully wiggle this back and forth, knowing that I'm going to break all these pins. I'm not going to do it too hard, not put a lot of force on it because I don't want to rip the pads out of there. Probably zoom forward. Might fast forward through this part on the video because this is not terribly exciting. Let's do this for a moment. I'm just weakening up those pins that are attached to the board. You can really start to feel it go eventually. It just gets a lot looser. So now they're almost all done. And we got, of course, one more straggler. And there we go. The old cartridge slot is gone. So this is obviously at this point, this is trash. We're just going to throw it away. Flip the board upside down here. Let's zoom in just a little farther. Or a little closer, I guess. So now we've got a whole bunch of leftover pins. Let's see if I can kind of show this in the video. See those pins sticking up right back here? As well as some leftover metal on each of these 4 ground connectors. But not a big deal at this point. All we need to do is hit them with a soldering iron and melt that, and basically just scrape the metal right off of there, which will leave us with a nice, I could use a soldering wick on that one, I probably won't worry about it, but leave a nice small little, there we go, that one. The one on the right side is a lot better. Nice little pad. So in theory, you could always, if you wanted to, for some crazy reason, solder a new cartridge slot on there. But for us, I'm just trying to get rid of the leftover metal pieces that are on there, just to clean it up. And the last one right here. Again, watching out for the other components nearby. And now we've got all of these pins here. Now watch out on the left side, or so right here, there's a couple tiny, I don't know if those are resistors or capacitors or what they are there. Just gotta watch out for those just a little bit, but really at this point, just give it a little bit of heat. And just push it off and get all those pins off of there. Every time I do this, it takes a moment because I'm cleaning the soldering iron on a wet sponge, so it cools off a little bit. So it takes it a moment to heat back up. we go. So let's see how well the camera zooms in here to focus. So there's some brown on there. Some of that's going to be some of the flux that I put on. Some of that looks like it might just be some sort of residual, something that was already on the board. I noticed when I was desoldering it that there was already some brown on there, but otherwise that looks good. So a couple things we should do at this point. I should have taken the stuff off the top of the display first, but let's go ahead and do that first. So we'll set this back off to the side for the moment. And go back to we'll zoom back out here. Go back to the upper half of the display. So now, a couple things we need to do on here. We're going to remove all these tabs and the plastic pieces here, these buttons, which are really disgusting. So it looks like I'm going to go upstairs and clean those off here in a moment. But we're going to take all these out, save those for cleaning. Actually, just pop it down like this. There we go. These are disgusting. It amazes me how dirty some of these consoles can get. So actually I'm going to go ahead and clean this too, because this whole piece is brown and disgusting. So we have a couple more screws here. This is where the actual hinge itself is. If you're going to be replacing or repairing DS Lites down the road, definitely save this hinge. You might need it for an actual broken hinge on a different console down the road. So I'm actually going to put these screws off onto a different side, because I'm not just going to use these for when I put it all back together, but take these out for now. And after that gets done, this little shoulder button pops off. We don't need this either. And then zoom out just a little farther so I don't have to worry about keeping stuff quite in the center. So now you can kind of see here, there's a tiny little slit that runs right across there. And that is where the ribbon cable itself actually runs through there during the factory assembly. So we are going to just feed it right back through there. Not being too careful since the display is actually broken, so I don't care if we damage the ribbon cable. Slide that through there. And then slide this top part, actually the bottom part, back off. And we're going to save this because this is going to go back on when we're done. And now we've got the top assembly. So we still need to get into this guy. We can't let this guy go yet. Here we can see here's our hinge. Then there's also a ring here that kind of helps protect some of the stuff over here. Save all those pieces if you want to, if you're going to do more repairs to different consoles down the road. I'm not going to worry too much about damaging this, so I'm just going to use my pliers and dig into these pieces here. There are 4 screws hiding under here that is keeping the top assembly together. And again, I'm not too worried about actually damaging these pieces. If it was on a console that I was doing a repair on and wanted to keep this in good quality, I would use like an X-Acto knife to get under there and avoid damaging those pieces. But for this, it's okay. 4 screws. And again, we're not going to reuse these screws when we put it back together, but I'm still going to keep them just for future work. So I'm going to put them off to a different side here again. And as we're doing this, I really like this screwdriver set. I'm really glad I picked this up. Again, not sponsored, but I like it. So from here, to get this apart, first it's kind of tricky looking at it and really don't know what to do, but this piece, this front piece, actually slides down from the back piece. So if we give it a little bit of a pull down, which it may or may not do, let's see. Can I do that with the hinge in place? I'm trying to remember. Let's go ahead and pull the hinge out here. get it out. The ring there is no big deal. It's not going to affect anything. The problem is, again, these get dirty, and so they don't separate terribly well. Take my spudger and just work your way around, and it slides right off. So here's the back cover. We're not going to need this when we put it all back together. And the rest of this. So we're getting awfully close to getting to the point where we can start reassembly. I'm going to, actually, you know what? So this actually has some double-sided sticky tape on it, kind of holding it into place. And tape kind of keeping all the cabling in place. In our case, since we're not reusing this, we can be a bit more violent with it. On screen swaps or case swaps, we got to be a little bit more careful. But just work our way around, disengaging that from the inside. Now we can pull it out here. So now we can see a couple things. Here is our microphone. So this was the white piece that was in there. I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out. Again, we don't need this. I've been saving all these pieces for repairs and stuff down the road, as well as the black cable, which was our for the Wi-Fi antenna. And now got this bad boy. So we can do it without having to pull it through there, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it out to make it easier. This ribbon cable, again, the screen itself is bad, so I don't care too much, but this is always a challenge to feed through there on screen swaps if you're trying to be careful, because this is where if you're going to damage a ribbon cable, or if you're going to damage something during the process, this is where that happens. So slide that out of there. Again, we're not going to need that anymore. And the only real reason why we've been going all through this trouble to get to this point is we need this one speaker. You can do stereo speakers if you want to. I've never bothered with it too much because it's kind of, there's some additional modifications necessary to do that. But mono is just fine for what we're doing. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to heat these solder pads up. We have a lot of solder on this speaker this time. Just going to come right off. Piece of cake. So all that work just to get a speaker. I'm going to move the broken screen out of the way. It's going to be trash because we don't need it. Get back to this original board here. And we are awfully close. So going back to these tiny little, let me close that tab there, touch points here. Let's see, I'm trying to look through the viewfinder to make sure it's in focus. We've got something that says LED A2, LED C2, and then SPL0 and SPR0. So it's going to be speaker left and speaker right. Then the LED A and C are just, I think that actually is what's used to test the power for the backlight for the LCD on top, which we're not going to do, but we're going to take advantage of those to solder a resistor onto it to make it think that there's an LCD attached. And then we're also, up here, we've got VN and V ground. We don't care about VN, but we're going to use V ground for the ground for our speaker. So a job like this could be super tricky. I'm actually going to zoom in here because this is going to be a really tiny job. With a little bit of practice, though, it's really not too bad to do. So the first thing I need to do is tin these little connectors, or these little testing points here. So I'm just going to throw clearly way too much flux down, but that's okay. I'm just going to use that to give a little bit of something for the solder to sort of to grab onto, and then the V ground as well. So to start, we're going to tin these tabs. So put a little bit of additional, let me clean my tip for a second here. Put a little bit of solder. Not a lot. This is going to be a really fine job on the soldering iron. And we're going to just touch each of these points that it's going to need. Put a little bit more on for the top. It's going to need a little bit of solder, so also for the V ground. So it doesn't look like much, and it really isn't. So much that the camera has a hard time. All right, so we can see we've got solder on. I got some on P06. You know what? It's not a big deal. It's just there's just solder on it in case you would ever need to connect to it. The point is, I got it on the LED A2, the LED C2, and the speaker left. Left or right, it doesn't matter. I just throw it on to left. And now really comes the tricky part. And I'm going to dig out a penny here out of my pocket for scale. So here's a penny, American penny. Not a huge coin. I mean, here's the tip of my pointer finger. And here is the resistors we're going to use. So let me get one of these guys out here in an attempt to not lose the other ones in the process, because they're so tiny. Make sure my microphone's still recording. I'm a little worried that my microphone's going to stop recording and I'm not going to notice it, since this is the first time trying to use it. Sorry, you're not seeing what's going on. I just pulled the resistor off out of the packaging, and I'm going to sit it into place. So it's really stinking tiny. I'll see if I can zoom in anymore and make this more viewable. So tiny the camera doesn't want to focus. There it is. So you can see how ridiculously tiny that resistor is. But not a problem, since we've tinned the pads. The hardest part's going to be doing it around the camera. I'm going to move the penny out of the way here. Since we've tinned our pads, rotate it, keep it back into focus. I'm going to clean the tip once more so I don't have any extra solder on there. And I'm going to simply hold the resistor on there. Give it a little bit of heat. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little bit more solder on there. I kind of went a bit light on the solder. Let's see, let's put a little bit more flex. Again, we're using such a tiny amount here. We can't go too crazy. Okay. Now, gotta find the fuse or the resistor. Just sit it back on. Hold it down. Tap it on there, and there we go. Hopefully that was in the camera. Now we're gonna do it once more on the side. Hold it down. Tap on this side to melt it. Not the best job, but I think it'll work. It's a little off to the side, but that's okay. Not a huge deal. So the whole point of that, again, is to throw some resistance on that that test here when it attempts to see if there's actually a screen connected. So with that, we have just a tiny little bit more soldering to do. We're going to throw this speaker here. Let's go ahead and zoom back out. We're going to attach it now. And that's going to attach to, see if we can do this again around the camera. Make sure I stay in the view here. It's going to go right to the speaker left and our ground. Shut off the soldering iron and we are good to go. So, do a couple more things at this point and then I'm going to pause and go clean all the plastic. So, let's do a couple things. First of all, we're going to take this ribbon cable, or the bottom display, the ribbon cable for the bottom display, reattach it to the board. Make sure that flap is up. And sometimes this one's a bit tricky to fit in. It seems like sometimes it doesn't want to fully go back in, so I kind of just wiggle the two sides here. You'll know it's in when the sort of the red tab or the ribbon cable fits flush with the white on the sides. And then clip that connector back down. And then we're going to take the digitizer and reattach it on the back. Try to do this still within the camera. And at this point, we are almost home free. So let's do another test here real quick before I pause it to go clean all the plastics. So we've got the display back in. We've got the speaker connected. We have the resistor, teeny tiny resistor right under there, to make it think there's a top display. So we should be good to throw the battery back on it. Let's turn the volume up. Test the speaker, flip it back over. Just going to kind of hold it. And we're going to flip the button up and cross our fingers. And it didn't work. Why didn't it work? That is because we did the amateur mistake again of forgetting to put this guy back on. So let's take the Wi-Fi chip / maybe BIOS. Attach it on there. We don't need to run the antenna wires or anything back to it. It's literally just there for whatever it's doing to help it boot. Flip things around. Finagle the speaker. I think every time I've done one of these, I've forgotten to put that back on. I get so excited to test it and I forget. Flip it back over again. Flip the power button. And boom, I hear audio and we have text. So we are in good shape. So we're home free now to start putting things back together. So I'm going to shut it back off. Take the battery back off. And take a lot of this plastic. You know what, I'm actually going to not worry about too much of this. I'm not going to worry about this for now because I'm going to end up disassembling this again down the road. But I'm going to take this and all the buttons and go clean it, and I will be right back. And just like that, we're back. So I went ahead, clean everything off real fast. I didn't do the greatest cleaning job. I just kind of wanted to get it done just to finish this video and finish the process. I'll go back when I actually paint and sand and finish the rest of this, give it a more thorough cleaning. But for us, for now, this is good enough. So let's see, let's do a couple things. So I brought my other one down for a couple of reasons. One of them is to make sure I put the buttons back in the right order, because I always seem to forget which way they go. They are keyed to an extent. If we look here on these, we can see like this one has 2 notches, then a piece that sticks out. This has 1, but so does this and this one. I believe they're not, they might actually be different enough to fit only one way. So let's go ahead and do that, I guess. So we'll throw the directional pad in there. And I actually also went ahead and cleaned these bumpers. So we removed the springs and stuff. So I'll show how to put that back together here in just a second. Let's see. A is going to go over here on the left. So clearly it's still dirty, but it's significantly cleaner than it was, just to get the point across for the video. So we'll just start setting all these back in. Grab my tweezers. And these start and select buttons, they can go either position. Set those pads in place. And then, actually for the moment, I'm going to take this off one more time. For the moment, I'm just going to sit the speaker kind of in the middle. And so the screen will just drop right into there. And then the upper part will kind of just notch into there. And so, let's see, make sure I'm still on the camera. There's actually enough room for the speaker if we want to run all the way. Let's see if I can do this around all the screw holes. Run all the way here to the side. Now it's in the way of that, which is okay. And drop the whole thing in. And we are about done. So let me grab my screwdriver, which is somewhere around here, and I'm going to secure the board back into place. And again, when you do this, make sure you keep your screws in order in the way you took them apart, so you know how to put them back together. And for now, I'm actually going to go ahead. I brought down just some double-sided 3M sticky pad. And I've been using this to help hold, I forgot to bring my scissors down again, to help hold the speaker into place during when it's installed. It should be enough. And again, based on the bottom cover for this one, this will need to be installed in the middle, which is why we removed the cartridge slot. And actually, while I'm at it, since I mentioned I was going to do it and I forgot, I'm just going to clean, see if I can get any of that residue off of these pins here. Which looks like we got some of it off of there. Enough to make me a bit happier with how that's looking. And then we'll take our speaker, keep the wires from getting in the way of where the Wi-Fi card is going to go, and secure it on there, just like that. So we'll take our Wi-Fi card and we'll actually use it to kind of help us to hold down the speaker wires. Set that there. Now comes kind of the tricky part. We've got our shoulder buttons. Now, let's see if I can get this in camera here. We have our shoulder buttons, keeping in mind this is upside down. So right is actually going to be on this side, and left is going to be on this right side here. These basically sit just like this. And then there's a little peg here that pushes onto these little micro switches here. And it's just going to click like that. However, we have to put the spring, really try to do this on camera, it's going to be tricky, between these slots here, just to make sure, because this is actually going to be used as sort of like pushback, to push the button back out after you've pressed it. So let's zoom out just so I can make sure that I'm always going to be in camera when I do this here. Since I took it apart, I have to put it all back together. See how carefully I can do this in front of the camera. And then I'll just put some force on the spring to keep it in place. And we'll set it down, just leave it there for the moment. Now we're going to do the same with the left button. So slide that in there, which you can't see because I'm not at all on camera. Slide our peg through it. Put some force and drop it in the slot. There we go. Now, I wait until this point, wait until they're both installed before I do this part of it. Really have a hard time doing it not in front of the camera, but I will then take the tweezers. There's a tiny little tab that's cut out right here, and this spring will actually go around and sit right in there. We'll do that on both of these sides. This one's a little bit more tricky with the network card. It's okay. And they're both in. So we're going to take the bottom cover. I'm going to go ahead and pull out this stylus slot since we don't need it anymore. Again, keeping the screws and all that for the future job. I'm gonna move that to clear up some space. We can see that's really dusty. I don't know how. I'm gonna move this out of the way and use my shirt to clean it off a little bit here. I don't know how these things can get so disgusting. And now, so a couple things. We have the power button slider here on the right and the volume button slider on the bottom. The power button, when you turn it on, it goes back down automatically, so we want to make sure the slider is down at the bottom. The volume, we'll just kind of look at where it's at on there, and we see that it's on the inside. So we're going to move this to the inside, so that way when we sit it in there, everything lines up and grabs properly. And push it down. Make sure everything actuates and connects as it should. Let's see if we can kind of see in there. The speaker's a little bit off center because I'm just doing it real fast, but it's okay. Drop this back down. And it's hard again, we're missing the hinge now, so everything's kind of wobbly. We're going to take our extra Am I missing a screw? That's right, I never had that one come out. So take the extra Phillips screw and get it on the screwdriver. Screw that down. Take the two sort of yellowish gold screws, which are the screws that were underneath of the bumpers. Put those down. Everything should start to go back together. At this point, double check, make sure shoulder buttons are still free, still working. Grab our black tri-wing screw here, which is the one that's going to go underneath the DS cartridge slot. And then the remaining three, this one that never did come out. Make sure the volume is still working. Nope, it's not. So I should have checked that out before. So at this point, let's fast forward the video. I'm going to redo this and make sure that I fix the volume. So let me go ahead and do that now. Okay, and we are back in business. So let's screw this corner one back down once more. Make sure our volume is now working. I must have, either it slipped as I was putting it on, or I just had the volume on the wrong side before I flipped it over. Not a huge deal. Once you've done it enough, it's not too bad to go through and take the back cover off. I know when I first did my full case swap, I screwed up the bottom a number of times, and first couple times I was really nervous taking it apart. I was afraid it was going to mess it all up, but did it enough times that now it's like second nature. It's not a big deal at all to do. Okay, got all the tri-wing screws back in. Let's take these bumper screws. Secure the hinge side. Man, I really love this screwdriver set. I'm so glad I bought it. If I don't forget, I'll throw a link in the description. But I think I just bought it off of AliExpress for $20 US maybe. And then the last screw right here. And we are home free. These bumpers, we can also do those while we're at it if we want to. I normally wouldn't, since I still have some more work to do, but I'll go ahead and just do it just to close it up, pretend we've got the whole job done. So they just stick right back on there. I'm sure each time we take it apart, they get a little bit less sticky. But some of the consoles you might buy won't even have them at all. Actually, it looks like, now that I see that, if we look in there, there's a water sticker here. This should be white with red dots if there's never been water on it. The red kind of just bleeds out when it gets wet. It's clearly got water all over it. So at one point, this must have gotten wet. I'm curious on that screen if that means the screen shorted out or something. I don't know. So let's take the battery and plop it in. I'm not going to put the cover back on for now. Flip it over. Have our shoulders working. Everything feels good so far. I feel like the D-pad feels a bit mushy. It's interesting. Starting to select clicky. So let's do a couple things. Oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and just turn it on. Let's just see what happens. Turn it on, and boom. Working. Awesome. So I'm just going to go through here. At this point, once you've done this, this really doesn't matter because this is just initial setup for the DS part of it that we'll never be able to actually take advantage of. So let's just go all the way through here. And then it's going to turn off. Now, I don't know how this one is set up. I forgot to check it ahead of time. When we run a Game Boy Advance game in here, it can run in one of two ways. It can run it on the top display or on the bottom display. Clearly the top display doesn't work, so we have to run on the bottom display. If it's wrong, we can do it in the settings. But that's why I brought this guy, so I can actually work through the settings to figure out how to make that change if I have to. So let's just see where it's at now. Let's turn it on and let's try it out. So right now it's configured to pop up on this anyway. Why are we not working? Interesting. So I may be completely wrong in making the case that we can play Game Boy games. I swore these were region locked, or were not region locked for Game Boy Advance games, but now I question that. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Let's find out. Is it going to play on the top? Nope. All right, it's playing on the top screen, which is why the bottom screen just went black. So let's see if we can change that here real quick. So let's turn both of these on. Let's see. So if we go down to the bottom setting, I can go to settings, other, and that one. Okay, so let's try that. And hopefully the battery will last. So we're gonna go to settings, gear, that. Yep, all right, it's on the top screen. We want it to be on the bottom screen. And get out of here and let it shut off. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. One more time. Pop that in. And you can set this up as well to have it automatically start the game. You know what? Maybe we should do that as well while we're at it. Let's do one more change. Let's see. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make that change as well while we're at it. Go back to settings. And we want this to be in auto mode. And shut off. All right. For the last and final time, moment of truth. Put the game in, boot it up. Looks good. I think we are in business. There we are, Super Mario Brothers. Turn the volume down a little bit. Works like a champ. The volume's a little bit quiet. Let's go ahead and shut it off now and prove that that works. Goodbye. And that's because right now, as we said before, the speaker is kind of sitting there in the middle. The speaker is firing right into this section. So right now we're hearing the audio as it's kind of just feeding out through the top. Ultimately, we will do something similar to like what I did on this one. Drill out some holes in the middle to give the speakers space to actually feed the audio through. Because if I do it with this guy that I've drilled that out with, which might have some battery left in it, it does. Much louder, just on those few holes drilled out. So if I start it up, significantly louder. So, yeah, I guess takeaway is it's almost ready to go. It needs some finishing work. I need to shave that off, Bondo it. I'll probably paint this one white as well. I like the white color of this one, so I'll probably find a similar matte white, paint that. Shoulder buttons are disgusting, but there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Bondo the back, paint the back. This could be interesting to paint with this clear shell. That'll be kind of a fun test as well. But yeah, I believe at this point the video's run definitely long. A lot longer than I expected it to be, but I wanted to give a thorough enough instruction on how to do it that it would be clear to follow down the road. So if you stuck around this long, thanks so much for coming back and watching another video. Hopefully this was helpful for those of you who might have a broken DS and wanted to do this, but wasn't sure how to do it. I do plan on doing a similar video in the future with one of the broken original DSs I have. I've actually never converted one of those yet, so we might just go through that process together on camera and see how that goes. With that, again, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or feedback on this video, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Any suggestions, requests, that kind of thing. Yeah, give it a like and subscribe if you'd like, all that good jazz, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot.